Jesus had fed the 5,000. He walked across the water. Peter thought he was going to pass him by, but he didn't. Then he got to the other side, and a woman came to him. No, a bunch of people came to him and said, if we can just touch the hem of your garment, we'll be made whole. They heard that from the other woman the last time he had been there. Then the Pharisees came to him and started. They went out of their way. People will go out of their way to find you when they do not agree with you, to make sure that they can put you in check, right? So the Pharisees came around and wanted to know, why do the disciples not wash their hands the same way we do? Not why don't they wash their hands, but why don't they wash their hands with all the ceremony? And Jesus said, you're worried about what goes in, but it's really what comes out of you that defiles you. It's going to mess you up. So now he needs to get away from the Pharisees again. Because sometimes you just need to get away from people. Isn't that right, Mary? Oh, yeah. Yes. So the Pharisees just finished being on him, and we start with Matthew chapter 15, verse 21.
Okay. Then Jesus went out from there and departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon.
Okay, so Tyre and Sidon, these are kind of famous regions. Mark added a little bit to it. So in Mark chapter 7, verse 24, someone else read that.
From there he arose and went to a region of Tyre and Sidon. And he entered a house and wanted no one to know it, but he could not be hidden.
So he didn't just go there, he went on purpose to this faraway region, and he went in the house like, I need to relax. I just fed 5,000 people, then I had to walk across the ocean, then I had to heal some more people, then the Pharisees attacked me again. I need a minute. Because Jesus was a human being, 100% human being, and 100% God. It wasn't half and half, it was 100% both. So he doesn't want anyone to know that he's there, but it's Jesus. So he can't hide who he is. Now, Tyre, okay. I might hear anything. Tyre and Sidon are kind of famous cities. So let's read about them. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 20 and 21, we've already heard about them, but I know you won't remember. So let's reread what we read in Matthew chapter 11, verse 20 and 21.
Then he began to review the cities in which most of his mighty works had been done, because they did not repent. Woe to you, Jerusalem! Woe to you, Bethesda! For if the mighty works which were done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes.
So he's saying, I did all these mighty works in all these incredible cities, and they won't repent. And that's kind of bad. It's not good when we see a lot of miracles, because then more is required of us. It's better that there's not much happening, so that we're not in much trouble. But if God shows up and this person's healed and that person's then he's expecting more from us, and we'd be the same way with anybody. And so he's saying, Bethsaida and all these other cities, you're going to be in trouble, because if these miracles had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented a long time ago. So the question is, had these miracles been done in Tyre and Sidon? Yes. He said, if they had been, then they would have repented. So that means they hadn't been. Right. So they hadn't been. Jesus hadn't gone to Tyre and Sidon. He's using them as an example, like this church is a mess. If I'd gone to the Strip on Vegas and started preaching, then they would have repented. Clearly you hadn't done that yet. Right. So he's trying to say, if I'd gone to Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago. Why didn't Jesus go there? If they would have repented long ago, why do you think Jesus didn't go there then?
Because it wasn't that time yet.
No, he says they would have repented. If I had done these miracles there, they would have repented. What was your guess?
It wasn't their time. It wasn't meant for them to do what needed to be done yet.
It wasn't their time yet. It wasn't their time yet. So there's a reason why she didn't go there, and there's a timing when it was supposed to eventually happen.
Because they knew ahead of time that they was already believers.
No, they were not believers. He said, if I had gone there, they would believe. So you just have to accept the fact that he didn't go there. They were non-believers, and Jesus personally did not go there. This, in fact, this is his first time there, and he's just barely on the shore. He didn't really go into the city. He's just in a house near the shore. But he wanted to show up there. So he's hiding from the Pharisees, because the Pharisees are not going to go to Tyre and Sidon. So let's read about these cities and figure out why. But I mean, we'll get back to that in a second.
So what's the reason he didn't go?
Well, we're going to have to keep reading and find out. But it wasn't time for him to go there yet. So we're going to discover a little bit more about Tyre and Sidon and why this was his first time there and why he had never preached and done miracles there. So he's in Tyre and Sidon, and we know that they've got a dubious reputation. We don't know why yet. Matthew chapter 15, verse 22 says,
And behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed.
So a woman of Canaan came from that region and says, have mercy on me. I underline have mercy because it's specific what she's asking for. And there's a reason Jesus is not going to give her mercy. So she says, have mercy on me. And she's from Canaan, a woman from Canaan. So here,
She was from one of the 12 tribes back in Canaan.
the Canaanites are not one of the 12 sons of Joseph.
No.
Oh, you had an extra?
I had for my daughter, but she showed me.
Okay. No, Canaan, now you've heard of Canaan, that's why you're confused. Like we hear about Canaan all the time. Canaan is the land that the Jews eventually went in and conquered. When they crossed over the Jordan, they were crossing into Canaan land. Okay, so she's a woman of Canaan. So the Jews were on one side and the people of Canaan were on the other. And she's a woman of Canaan. The Jews were slowly moving into their territory. So let's look back. So I have Luke chapter 6, verse 17.
And he came down with them and stood at a level place with a crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea and Jerusalem and from the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon, who came to hear him and be healed of their diseases.
Now, he had been there, he had been nearby earlier. All of Judea and Jerusalem were there, and he was just on the coast. He was just on the coast, and they came to be healed of their diseases. He didn't go all the way into them. So, I was
like LA, Gardena, Inglewood,
right. You may show up on the beach at Manhattan Beach. You never made it all the way to South Central. People from South Central may go down to Manhattan Beach to hear you preach. Jesus never made it to South Central. The people from South Central are showing up.
Bringing their sick.
Right. And then they're going back. But this time, he's actually going to go a little bit farther. So he had been there a little bit earlier, but and they came from that region to hear him. People from Tyre and Sidon came to hear him, but now he's actually showing up. He's actually showing up at their place. And so let's look at some history of Tyre, Sidon, and the Canaan people. So look at Genesis chapter 9, verse 24. It says,
Then he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brother.
so who's saying this? Cursed be Canaan. Who's saying this? We talked about it on Sunday. Some of you were there. Okay, so this is Noah.
Okay.
Noah has 3 sons, Japheth, Ham, and Shem. Ham's son was Canaan. Ham's sons, Canaan, was the one who probably snuck in, looked at his grandfather, went and told his dad. His dad told his brothers went in and covered up Noah's nakedness. And Noah cursed not Ham, but Ham's son, Canaan. Cursed be Canaan, and all your descendants, Canaan. Now Ham had a bunch of different descendants. Canaan was one. They pretty much stayed in that same area, which the Jews eventually occupied. Cush was another. These were all different sons. Cush, they went to Africa. They migrated to Africa. Cush was not cursed. Just Canaan was cursed. And when God spoke to Abraham, he said, I'm going to give you Canaan's land eventually, because they have a curse on them. And eventually those people are going to be eradicated from the earth. So of all the people mentioned who were Noah's children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, the Canaanites, they don't exist anymore. Some of the descendants of Canaan were Sodom and Gomorrah. So the Canaanites, they're these cursed people. They know they're these cursed people. And as the Jews came in, the descendant of the Canaanites were the Hittites and the Amorites and the Jebusites. Every time God told the Jews to go and kill those Amorites or Jebusites, those are the descendants of Canaan. And Noah said, you're going to be cursed. You're going to be cursed, you and your descendants. So she's a Canaanite woman. There's not a lot of them left. So she already knows, wow, there's a curse on me. There's a curse on my people as far as how the Jews look at us. So they are Gentiles. They are not Jews. The Jews came out of Noah's other son, Shem, not Ham. So the Canaanites are different people. Shem, they're different people. And so the Jews came from there. So Jesus is spending all his time in Jerusalem and Judea, but finally he says, I'm going to go over here and just be on the shore of Tyre and Sidon. But he goes to a house, he's trying to hide, but the woman shows up and says, have mercy on me, have mercy on me. So let's look at Genesis chapter 10, verse 15 before we go on.
Canaan begot Sidon, his first son, and Heth.
Right, and Heth or Heth, that's fine. So Canaan's firstborn son was Sidon, or Sidon. We don't know how they said it, so it doesn't really matter. And he went and founded the city of Sidon and named it after himself, right? So they're in Tyre. Tyre's another descendant of Canaan. These cities are not next to each other, like Oakland and San Francisco, right across from each other. And she's a Canaanite, meaning I'm descended from Canaan. And I'm living in the city that my great-great-great-great-grandfather founded.
Right.
So when she says, have mercy on me, son of David, she's saying something very interesting. She's not a Jew, but she's calling him son of David. Now there are people that he's trying to convince he's the son of David. His own people, the Jews, they're on him all the time. And yet this woman believes that he really is the son of David. So, but she's not a Jew. Yes, ma'am.
Or does she believe because she wants him to have mercy on her?
He's saying, have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. I'm going to tell you why he didn't have mercy on her in a minute. But yeah, because her woman, she says, my daughter is possessed of the devil. Now I know Mary has some daughters that, no, I'm just kidding. But her daughter was possessed of the devil. And so she needed, so please have mercy on me. I know that you're the Messiah. I believe what the Jews say. You know, I'm not Jewish. That's not my tribe. I didn't come from that, right? But she's there, and Jesus has not set foot on Gentile soil before. He's only been in Jerusalem, Judea, and Galilee, in that area where all the Jews are. He hasn't been to any non-Jewish area. This is his first time going there. So she's saying, have mercy on me, have mercy on me. So Jesus, there's 4 answers that Jesus gives. Here's answer number 1, Matthew 15, verse 23a says.
But he answered her not a word.
So his first answer was silence. Sometimes God purposely doesn't say anything. Because have mercy on me, son of David. She comes into the house where they are. Jesus actually leaves the house and just doesn't say anything.
But he heard her.
He heard her,
Yeah.
and he purposely does not say anything. And I'm saying sometimes we pray, God does not say anything. We get in trouble if we try to make up an answer. That's how sometimes people miss it. Sometimes God is purposely not saying, there's a purpose in the silence. Let's look at an example of that. 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 35 through 37. The Philistines have been attacking, and Saul wants to get rid of them.
Oh, thank you.
So Saul is telling everybody, we got to fight these Philistines. We got to fight them.
Alright.
And in order to win, I don't want any, we're going to fast.
You want what?
We're going to go on a fast.
Oh, we're
in
gonna
order
do
to
that.
win.
Okay.
So if you're about to get into a fight with somebody, and you're going to be running all day and going over mountains and through hills, and maybe fasting is not the best thing.
That part.
But he believed, like most Baptists, you can get God to do stuff if you fast. I want a car, so I'm going to fast. I want a new job, so I'm going to fast. Because we just think, if I fast, that'll make God do stuff. So he calls a fast. So let's read 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 35 through 37.
Then Saul built an altar to the Lord. This was the first altar that he built to the Lord. Now Saul said, let us go down after the Philistines by night, and plunder them under the morning light, and let us not leave a man of them. And they said, do whatever seems good to you.
So the people said, hey, whatever you say, let's just do it. That's what the people said. Go on.
Then the priest said, let's draw near to God here.
But the priest said, let's ask God first. So the people said, yeah, whatever you say. That sounds good. If you want to go down there and we'll just fight him, whatever you say. But the priest said, let's draw near to God and ask God first what we should do. So, verse 37.
So Saul asked counsel of God, shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you deliver them into the hand of Israel? But he did not answer them that day.
So there's silence. It's another example of people praying to God. They're in the middle of a war. By the way, his son Jonathan, Saul's son Jonathan, has a group of people somewhere else, and they're fighting. And they, in fact, have decided not to fast. Jonathan never heard the word that they were supposed to fast. So he's eating, and then all people see Jonathan eating, and they say, well, he's eating, I'm going to eat. So they've got all this energy. So they're actually winning a whole bunch of battles. All the people who are fasting, they're losing all their battles. So there's two different sets of people. But he wants to know, Lord, should we go? Are you going to have questions? And God doesn't answer him. Because sometimes God does not answer him. There's a purpose in the silence. Okay.
The second one.
What's the second one? What?
The answer said number 3.
I'm going to get to the... wait.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought that you didn't.
No, I got them all listed. Answer 1, answer 2, answer 3. So the first way he answers the first question with silence, I'm just saying that that's on purpose. So let your mind slow your roll. Because I want you to understand that sometimes we pray and God purposely does not answer us. Why do you think that is?
That's why we're supposed to develop patience. Wait upon God.
Yeah, but why sometimes does he not give you an answer? Yes, we have to wait. But sometimes he's not going to answer you. On purpose. So why the silence?
Maybe he already spoke to you and you wasn't listening.
Sometimes he's already given you an answer. You didn't listen to him. He's not going to repeat himself. That's certainly true.
Maybe that he's waiting for a certain time. Like, I'm not gonna say yes right now, because then you're gonna go right now. So if you wait a minute, then it'll be the right opportunity for everything to be in his perfect will.
Right. He's not answering now, although we could answer and say go in 5
Absolutely.
weeks.
Absolutely.
But sometimes he's waiting because he wants you to wait on purpose.
Or maybe you haven't asked the right question.
Sometimes you're not asking the right question, so he's waiting for you to ask the right question.
You know, if he said we're going 5 weeks, we gonna go right now.
Right.
We're going right now.
And here's a fourth reason. Those are all valid reasons. And I apologize if I was told this ear is totally stopped up. So I may be talking loud and I don't know it. So if I get loud, let me know. I had the television on too loud early this morning. Cynthia got it. Boy, why is it what? I don't know. Here's another reason. God wants us to examine ourselves. So he's not going to say anything. He wants us to examine why we're asking the question. So he's not going to say anything. There's some self-examination that needs to be done. There's a lesson to learn. So he purposely does not answer us because he wants us to take time and go, there's a lesson we need to learn, and we'll learn it best by the silence. So here's what happened with Saul. Again, Saul sees the Philistines. They are fighting them. Jonathan actually is winning a lot of his. So the Philistines are on the run. The question is, should we go after them and chase them? Because they're already on the run. He's saying, should we go down after them and chase them? And God doesn't answer them. So here's what Saul does. I keep saying Samuel, but here's what Saul does. 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 38.
And Saul said, come over here, all you chiefs of the people, and you know and see what this sin it was today.
So he said there must be some sort of sin because God didn't answer. So somebody's at fault. He's trying, like, why wouldn't God answer? That's Saul's. Now there was some sort of sin, but whose sin probably was it? Probably Saul's sin. Thank you. But Saul is saying, everybody come over here, we're going to find out why God didn't answer. There's some sin. So he's using self-examination, except he's not examining himself. But he's saying, let's examine who's at fault. Now, so he divided everybody up. He and Jonathan were on one side, and he put all the people on the other. That was fair. He says, okay, which one of us is at fault, Lord? And they cast the dice or whatever, and it pointed to them, Saul and to Jonathan. Instead of all those people, there was 1,000 people on one side and just 2 of them. So the chances of it just being the 2 of them were pretty slim. They said, God said, no, it happened, it is you. So then he divided it up again between him and Jonathan. Which one of us is at sin? Then he said, what did you do, Jonathan? Did you eat that? When I told everybody not to eat, I said we got to fast, and that's how we're going to get victory. Did you eat? And Jonathan said, yes, I did. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to eat. Well, you sinned, and you have to die, because he had said, if anybody eats any food, you have to die. Now he again made that up. We make stuff up all the time. And this is what we got to do. If you don't do it, God's going to be mad at you. That's not true. We just decided that. Right? If you don't do it this particular way, if you don't wear this particular color, or whatever, you just make up something. If you don't do, you have to do 2 songs and a prayer and a scripture, otherwise God's going to be mad. You have to do it at the beginning of the service. God forbid you had a scripture at the end of the service. That'll throw everything off.
Right.
So we just decide something, it has to go this way, and if you don't do it that way, then everything's bad. So that was just his decision. It was just Saul's decision. God never told him to call a fast. He just did that. So he decided, Jonathan, you have to die. So let's look at this, 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 43 through 46.
Then Saul said to Jonathan, tell me what you have done. And Jonathan told him and said, I only tasted a little honey with the end of the rod that was in my hand. So now I must die?
Go ahead.
Saul answered, God do so, what?
God do so, and more also. Like God's going to kill you, yes. God do so, and more also.
Okay, I don't know what that means. Okay.
Which is God's going to do it. God's going to do that. He's saying do so.
Because you did that.
Yeah, because surely God is backing up what I'm saying. I said everyone must die, and God put me in charge. So therefore, everything I say must be the gospel. So God will do so and even more. So yeah, Jonathan, even though you're my son, you must die.
Wow. So you shall surely die, Jonathan. But the people said to Saul, shall Jonathan die? Who has accomplished this great deliverance in Israel?
So he's saying, Jonathan's the one that won all the battles today. Saul, you didn't win one battle because you were working with these people who haven't eaten. Jonathan defeated the Philistines. He's the reason why they're running. You're asking God, should we go after him? And God didn't say anything. But so Jonathan died, and he's the one that actually had success today. You had nothing but failure. He's the one that was successful. So really, should Jonathan die? Go on.
Certainly not. As the Lord lives, not one hair of his head shall fall to the ground, for he has worked with God this day.
Yeah, he's the one that's worked with God this day. So clearly God was on his side and not on your side.
These are the people talking to him?
Yes.
Okay.
So the king has said he's going to die, and the people said, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's odd.
Because he's the one that delivered us. He's the one that defeated the Philistines. God was clearly working with him. So you're trying to say it's God's will that he should die?
I find it interesting, I guess because I'm puzzled, is because normally back in those days, is that whatever the king did and whatever the king said, it went.
Exactly.
That you didn't have no rebuttal, you didn't have no come back to nothing.
Right.
That's why I'm so surprised that
Who else was surprised? Saul. That's why God did not answer him that day. God knew what was about to happen.
Okay.
Because Saul's thinking, I'm the king and everything I say goes.
Right.
And God backs me up. God backs me up. So for example, I'm just using this example. When we had, 15 years ago, an interim pastor at a church had a Bible study. Probably 6 people came to it, which is fine. Doesn't matter how many people.
Right.
On the same night, a youth pastor decided to have a Bible study. His Bible study had maybe 30 people in it, youth and young adults. The pastor's had 6, his had 35. But this interim pastor thought, well, God's on my side because I'm the interim pastor. So what they're doing is wrong, so we're going to just cut that.
The whole Bible study because it's wrong.
Well, because when we get into certain positions of power, our assumption is everything we say must be right. I'm the president of such and such club, or I'm the this or that, and we just think God must back up everything that I say. And I say that I'm right and that's wrong. So they got rid of the youth Bible study, thinking they'll all come over here.
Yeah, right.
But they did not, did you?
She
She was in. So they stopped coming, right? But the thought was the people will all back me up because I'm the interim pastor, right? But the people said no. Surprise.
No song.
Right. Because normally the people, well, the pastor said, but they felt they weren't getting fed, right? They had been getting fed. And it was just like, it's like, Jonathan is the one that's working.
Right.
You're not working. So why are we going to follow you? So Saul was quite surprised. This is why God was silent that day. Because Saul had to then think to himself, everything's not like it seems. Maybe I need to examine myself. I don't have as much control as I thought. Maybe God's not behind everything that I do and that I think. So God purposely didn't give him an answer because he was going to lead him through a period of self-examination. Melita said that earlier. You have to question, why am I asking this question? Why, maybe there's something wrong with my prayer. Maybe that's why God's not answering. Because I'm saying, God, you support me and should be. And God's like, actually, I'm not even
In there.
I'm not even in it. I was in what Jonathan was doing. I wasn't in anything that you're doing. So not only should you not go, you really shouldn't even be king still. So yeah, it was the wrong prayer. It was the wrong prayer in this case. So sometimes we praying, God, should I get the Cadillac or should I get the Rolls Royce?
What do you think it just do? Oh, it's
And
arrogance.
and God's like, you're supposed to be on the bus.
But it was just arrogance too on Saul's part, because at this point, you know, he got the big head because he's all of that, you know?
And we all get the big head in whatever area we are in life. If we're the lunch lady pulling out spaghetti, no spaghetti for you. You know, I mean, we all build kingdoms and assume that God is backing up everything. And sometimes we're actually praying the wrong prayer. Not God, what should I do? But God, should I do this or this? We give him two choices. And he's like, you're even asking the wrong question. You're asking the wrong question. So sometimes God doesn't answer. There's silence because he's going to force us to self-reflect. We're about to go through a couple tests so that we'll go, oh, now I see. I was looking at this all wrong. I was asking the wrong question. So the woman who says, have mercy on me, son of David, she correctly identified Jesus was the Messiah. But have mercy on me was the wrong thing to ask for. And we're going to examine why. In a little bit of time we have left. But so what is the difference between mercy and grace?
Mercy is holding, mercy is what God gives you, but you don't deserve. And grace is, I got it backwards. Mercy is God not giving you what you do deserve, and grace is God giving you what you don't deserve. Did I just say it in wrong?
Right. So, yes. So if I say have mercy, if I'm asking for mercy, it's I really don't deserve it. I don't. It's starting with I don't deserve it. So have mercy on it. I don't deserve it. So I want you to give this to me, even though I don't deserve it. Right? Mercy starts with it. But grace is a different thing. It's a different attitude. So her saying, have mercy on me, son of David, he wouldn't answer her because she's asking for the wrong thing. He doesn't want her to ask for mercy. He doesn't want her to ask for mercy. So we'll just keep going and examine it. So I didn't finish what happened. So the people rescued Jonathan and he did not die. Look at verse 46.
Then Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place.
So he said, oh, well, I won't pursue them. So they went on back to their place because there was a later time when that they're supposed to be dealt with, right? But for now, Saul just went back to his place and realized maybe I'm asking the wrong thing. Maybe the universe is different than how I thought it was. So he had to change Saul's thinking. Okay, so Jesus has just left the house and not answered the woman. Matthew chapter 15, verse 23, the second half of verse 23 says,
And his disciples came and urged him, saying, send her away, she cries out after us.
Right, so they came after him.
In my Bible it says, send her away, she begged too much.
But that's it. Because she's just continuing to cry out. Ah, she's just crying and crying. Because Jesus is now walking away from him. Jesus went in the house to get away, it says.
Yeah.
The woman showed up. Jesus! Ah! Right? So he doesn't say nothing. He just leaves. She keeps following him. And the disciples say, please send her away because she's going to keep crying. Now they actually mean send her, answer her prayer. So she'll go, so she'll leave us alone. They really don't mean send her away empty-handed. Just answer her prayer so that she'll leave.
Oh, okay.
And Jesus is saying, I can't answer that prayer. There's a different prayer that I can't answer. There's a different attitude. And I'll explain. Yes, ma'am?
You can't answer that prayer because of her being came from where she's from.
That's part of it because of how she looks at it. So don't forget the Canaanites, they believe they're all cursed.
Right, so she already.
She's thinking, I don't deserve it. I'm cursed. I'm from a terrible people. So just have mercy. And Jesus can't answer that prayer for a couple of reasons. There's a couple of reasons. So here's what he says. Here's just answer number 2. Jesus answer number 2. Answer number 2, Matthew chapter 15, verse 24. But he answered the disciples. Go ahead.
And he answered and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
So he's saying one reason why I can't answer her prayer is because I was sent only to the Jews. Now, what he did for the Jews has an effect on everybody, but that's who I'm supposed to minister to. So I can't minister to her because I was sent to the house. The disciples are saying, go ahead, not just send her away, but answer her prayer so she'll go away. I can't. And it's important to know who God is sending you to, because that's who he will anoint you to help. We have to stay within our lane. Jesus said, I have to stay in my lane. I'm only supposed to minister to the lost sheep of Israel. She's a Canaanite, so I really am not supposed to be ministering to her. Now there's a reason why Jesus is saying this to the disciples. They needed to know it, because later on they were going to have their assignments. And they needed to know what their lane was and to stay in their lane. So that, because it's easy to get out of your lane. But if you have anointing to a certain group of people, that's who you're supposed to be ministering to. And when you do stuff that you're not supposed to do, it doesn't work. He's not going to support you. Right, because he said, this is who I've sent you to. So if you have a ministry to unwed mothers, then you shouldn't be ministering to homeless men on the streets. That's going to happen. Does that make sense? Because God's going to protect you or anoint you. You have to know what your lane is. Even though they have a need, that's not your area. So Jesus says, I was sent to the lost Israel. She's a Canaanite. She's a Gentile. She's not Jewish. So that's one reason why I can't minister to her. Yes?
I always have a problem with that scripture, only to the Jews, so.
To the Jews first. Didn't say only to the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay. I may not already have a problem with that scripture.
Right, and he's saying God has an order that things are supposed to happen. Like we're supposed to, as a church, first get our stuff together, minister to each other, learn how to love one another. Then we can go out and reach the world. You can't be effective if your own house is falling apart. Right, so Jesus says, I said to the Jews first. There was a promise that was made to the Jews. I've got to fulfill that. Then once I've done that, God will free me to do the next thing. It's not like he'll limit you to that forever.
So something you did say was that what he's going to do affects everybody else.
Yes, so it's not like only the Jews are going to get it. But if I do what I'm supposed to do with the Jews, then that will spread out everywhere else. But if I try to go everywhere else first and not do what I'm supposed to do, I won't be effective. God will not anoint what I'm doing. So it's important for us to know who we're called to do, what we're anointed to do. Then once you fulfill that, he might move you on to the next thing. So somebody, you know your name, Rodney, if Rodney's supposed to evangelize right now, or he's supposed to be teaching, if he does what he's supposed to do, in 5 years, God may say, well, now I want you to pastor. But if he tries to pastor now, it will all fall apart. And a lot of people may come up to him and say, well, you should have your own church, or blah, 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 you know. It's like, no, I need to do what I'm supposed to do. If God called me to move on to that next thing, fine. But first I need to do this. Just because you think I should do that, I have to do what I know how to do. Because that's why I'm effective, because I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. We often push people, you're so good at this, you should probably do that. No, the reason I'm good at this is because that's my anointing. As soon as you move me to the other area, I'm not going to be good. Yes, yes.
Oh, there was somebody who thought first you become an usher, then you become a deacon, and then you become a pastor. It was all wrong.
Right.
It's not like you're moving up in rank.
Right. They're different types of ministry. And maybe you're supposed to just usher and be a greeter, and that's a ministry. And and God may just leave you there. Period. Remember Peter and John, when Jesus came back, God told Peter, feed my sheep. You're actually a pastor, Peter. I want you to feed my sheep. That's what I'm calling you to a specific place, and you're going to feed them. And he said, what about John? And Jesus says, no, that's not your business. Stay in your lane. Just do what I called you to do. And so it's only when the disciples started trying to do other stuff that they weren't called to do. They started telling Paul, you can't go to the Gentiles. And Paul's like, I'm called to the Gentiles. That's my calling. In fact, Paul kept getting in trouble because he was trying to, he would always try to talk to the Jews first, and then they would try to kill him. And then he would go to the Gentiles, and they'd all get saved. And the next thing he'd go to the Jews first, and they try to kill him. Finally, he realized, oh, my calling is to the Gentiles. Let me just leave the Jews alone. That's my calling. Peter's supposed to talk to the Jews. I'm supposed to do it with the Gentiles. So it's realizing what your calling is. So Jesus is saying out loud to them, I'm called to the house of Israel. That's one reason I cannot help her. I cannot go to her house and pray for her child, because I can't even go, I can't step another foot, because then I'll be in Gentile territory. I'm literally having to stay in Judea and Israel. So as long as I'm on this beach, I haven't really crossed over into South Central. Yes, sir?
You know, it's just like myself.
Uh-huh.
I've been feeding the homeless for 19 years. And they try to get me to go up. I used to sing in the choir, remember?
Right. And then you get all worn out.
Yeah. Went in the hospital.
See? Trying to do too much. So you have to know, and very well-meaning people come up, come on, always sing in the choir. And you have to say no. And people aren't evil when they are asking to do other stuff. They're just thinking, oh, you're so good at this, why can't? But God, you know what God told you to do. They don't know what God told you to do. But you know. They're not going to get in trouble if you do something else. You're going to get in trouble. They're not going to end up in the hospital. You know, so we've got to know what God has called us to do and stay in those boundaries. And then if he calls you to do something else, fine. But that's not the plan. You don't have a plan. I'm do this, and I do that, and I go there. You know? So Jesus said, this is it. I'm called to the house of Israel. In fact, in Romans chapter 15, verse 8 and 9, Paul talks about that.
Now I say that Jesus Christ has become a servant to the circumcision for the truth of God.
Who are the circumcision? The Jews, because they're circumcised. So he's a servant to the circumcision for the truth of God. He's supposed to give the truth of God to them. Go ahead.
To confirm the promises made to the fathers, and that the Gentiles might glorify God for his mercy.
So Jesus was a servant to the circumcision in order to fulfill the promises that God made to their fathers. God said, I will deliver you and I will come to you. So Jesus' job was to do that. He had to do everything that God promised would happen through the Messiah, specifically the Jews. But there was going to be an overflow of it, that ultimately mercy would come to the Gentiles. So the Gentiles, there's two words I should have underlined, promises and mercy. Anything God has promised us, you don't have to beg for, or cry for, or plead for mercy. It's what you claim. You don't say, oh Lord, have mercy. Jesus, please heal me. You don't have to beg him to do that, because it's a promise. By his stripes we were healed. So when we beg and cry and plead as though we have to, that would be like your child saying, oh mama, please feed me. It's like, I feed you every night. What's wrong with you? Right? You'd be insulted. Why are you crying like I don't? You don't have to come and beg me to feed you. Don't you know I fed you before you knew what food was? So God doesn't want, so there are promises that were made, and we can't have an attitude that we have to beg God into it. And I told you about the times I've been, when I was called to pray for the sick, and I'd be laying hands on certain people and they just receive, like, I believe it, I got it. And other people who are crying, and God's not against crying, but some people were crying because they did not believe. I've just done too much. And the devil's in their head telling them how it's not going to work. It's too late. The doctors I know, if they had listened years ago, and so they don't believe. So they're thinking it would only be God's mercy. And at that point, God is calling for faith. Not, because faith comes in response to something that you know you do deserve to get. And he wants us to believe that he's going to give it to us. That's when faith comes into play. Yes, ma'am?
I didn't hear your second part. It says that anything God promises you, you don't have to beg it to do.
Right, you don't have to beg for it.
About the mercy part. What did you say?
Right. You do not have to rely on God's mercy in order to get what he's promised you. You don't have grace. You don't have to believe. We have faith in his grace that he is giving us, that he's already decided to give us, but we don't deserve it. Mercy says, I don't deserve it. I don't just, just please have mercy. The grace says it's been given to us. So because what Jesus did, he's going to give it to us. And he asks us to have faith in his promise. Faith is the evidence of things I say, but faith is the evidence I'm going to have it. I believe it. If I touch the hem of the garment, I will be healed. She didn't say, oh, I hope it works. I hope it works. She said, if I touch, I will be healed. She believed. We talked last week about all the people touching Jesus. It wasn't the touch. He said, daughter, your faith made you whole, not that touch. And there's nothing wrong with laying at people and touching it, but that's not what heals it. The hand is not what heals it. The cloth, you can pray for all the prayer cloths you want. There's nothing wrong with it. You can anoint it with nothing. I'm not saying good or bad, but don't put your faith in the oil. Don't put your faith in the cloth or the hand. Your faith has to be in the God's promised this. Now, sometimes God will move by his mercy and just heal everybody. They don't have to have any faith. We've talked about the times when, and I pointed out, I said, well, that person was dead. They didn't have any faith. They were dead. But God's mercy just moved. So sometimes God's mercy will move, but there's other times he's requiring faith that you believe he's going to do it. Because it's insulting. Like I said, we're his children, and if your children were weeping and crying because it's like, I just fed you last night. What are you crying? You don't think that would be weird to us. Why do you think I'm going to feed you? What's wrong with you? So mercy is not what he was demanding of this woman. Mercy was not what he wanted her to understand. But so we'll get to that. So, Matthew 15, chapter 25.
Then she came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me.
Right, so first she said, have mercy. She's kind of modified it to, Lord, help me. So Jesus answers number 3, Matthew chapter 15, verse 26.
But he answered and said, it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. So
he's testing her. It's not good. This bread belongs to the children. It belongs to the Jews. I can't throw it to the little dogs. Now he says little dogs. He uses a specific word, which I'll explain in a second. Now that's what Matthew remembers him saying. Here's what Mark remembers Jesus said. Mark 7, verse 27.
Jesus said to her, let the children be filled first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs.
Let the children be filled first, to the Jews first. So Mark remembers that he said, not that the little dogs could never have it, but let the children, I have to first do this. And then God will bless and multiply it, and these Jews will go and preach the word in Samaria and to the uttermost parts of the world. There's a reason why the Samaritans had to be next. And then the Gentiles. And there was an order that God was going to do it. And skipping that order wasn't going to work. So he said, let the children be fed first. Because you can't take the children, what God is meaning for them, I can't take it and throw it to the little dogs. Now, little dogs is a different word than big dogs in the Hebrew. That means family pet. Here's Goliath used a different word, and it was pejorative, sorry. But in 1 Samuel chapter 17, 43.
So the Philistines said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistines cursed David by his side. So they
had wild dogs that they would throw sticks at to get rid of. So when he sees David, it's like he's calling David a little stick. You just throwing a stick at me like I'm a dog. Like you better come to me correct and bring somebody. Right. You treat me like I'm some dog. You just throwing David at me. Right. So, but he meant wild dog. This term, little dog, means family pet. So here's what when Jesus said, I shouldn't take the children's bread first, I gotta get to them first, and I can't take the bread and throw it to the family pet. She said, Matthew chapter 15, verse 27.
She said, yes, dear Lord, yes, even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master.
So the children belong to who? The master, right? And who does the little dog belong to? The master. The master. They both belong to the master. And she got that. Even though you're not the children, my child, you're my pet. So you belong to me too.
Exactly.
You're showing up, have mercy, because you're thinking I'm a Canaanite, I'm cursed, and that it takes mercy. But there are promises in the Old Testament that were made to you too. The promises weren't just to the Jews. It says the Jew first and then the Gentile. That's what Paul was quoting. He came to the Jew, to the circumcised first, that he may also have grace on the Gentile. So there are promises in the Bible for you too. And that's why it doesn't matter that he talks about the Jews, because there's plenty of promises in there for us. So we're not the children, we're not the Jews, but there's a thousand scriptures all about how he's going to bless the Gentiles and bless the Gentile. So he's saying, I don't have to have mercy on you. Just have faith in the promise that I gave you.
I think she also, to me, where I know this story well, I think that she was also saying, oh, you're going to bless me. I believe that you're going to bless me, and I'm not going to stop talking to you until you bless me, because I know that you might have to go, feed the kids first, but you still got to feed me too, because that's what your word says, and that's what I'm standing on.
Right, but she didn't get that. She didn't
At
ride
first,
with that.
when she said it,
Yes.
right, because she, like Bear said, she just said the way she said it was, or Melita, the way she said it was incorrect or
Right.
different way.
So because there's two different women that come to Jesus. One, she's persistent, and so he blessed her because of her persistence, and he uses that as a lesson. So that person from the beginning knew, I'm not leaving you until I get blessed. This woman thought the only way to get it from him is to cry, and that's why the disciple says, just give it to her, because she keeps crying. The woman with the issue of blood wasn't crying when she touched him with his garment. She said, if I touch him, I'm going to get healed. She said, okay, that's it. She wasn't like, oh, Lord. Again, I'm not saying you should never cry. I'm saying if the tears come from an attitude of, this is not going to work, the only way it's going to happen is if he has pity on me. That would be like your child thinking the only way mom is going to feed me is if, if I cry all night. Now, there are times that our kids crying, right? And because they want pity. And we say, shut up that crying, But that's what the tears are for, to make you feel sorry for them. But you would say, I don't have to feel sorry. But you would say, I don't have to feel sorry for you to feed you. I'm not feeding because I feel sorry for you because you're my child.
Right.
And that's what he's saying to her. You don't have to cry to get this from me. You have a promise too. Even though you're not the children, from Abraham, you're not during that line, you still belong to the master. Just like the master's pet's still going to get, because that's my pet. That's not my child, that's my pet. So you're going to get the crumbs, and the crumbs are enough. All you need is the crumbs. The crumb from Jesus is, get you out of the wheelchair.
Right, okay.
So when she got that, she said, oh, I get it. Even the crumbs, the pets get the crumbs. The pets get the crumbs. And then Jesus gave his fourth answer before Matthew 15:28.
And Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire.
Yeah, sorry.
And her daughter was healed from that very hour.
Jesus didn't have to go there. She finally got it. I believe you're the Messiah, because she showed up believing he was the Messiah, different from those other people he was trying to convince. So, I get the crumbs. The crumbs are enough.
That part.
And Jesus said, now you get it. Now great is your faith. You get it now. There's been a change in you. I didn't answer you at first because you were asking the wrong thing. Have mercy. I need to have mercy on you. The promises belong to you too, even though you're not a direct child. And the promises belong to us. So anything we read about the Jews, we get those same promises. We don't have to be children. We can just be a pet at the table. It doesn't matter. We get to eat the crumbs, and that's enough. So once she got that, her daughter was healed. Jesus didn't even go. Her faith, it's like if I touched him, okay, I get it. She went on home, and her daughter was already doing better by the time she got there. She said, that's great faith. You get it now. You get it now. And so, what's the last? So, Romans 4, verse 16.
Therefore, it is of faith that it might be according to grace.
So he makes it by faith, he doesn't make it by birth. So there are a lot of Jews, people who are born Jews, they're not going to get the promises because they don't believe. He says, so it's of faith that it might be according to his grace. Jesus, what he did in the cross was his grace. He did something for us proactively so that we could all get it. So, not, yes, ma'am?
I'm sorry, can I read it this way?
Just 1 second. Not only those who are of the law, not only the Jews, but also those who just have faith in what Abraham did. So that he's the father of everybody. He's the father of the faithful, people who believe. Yeah, read your version.
So the promise is received by faith. It is given as a free gift, and we are all certain to receive it, whether or not we live according to the law of Moses, if we have faith like Abraham's, for Abraham is the father of all who believe.
Right, he's father of all who believe.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter that you're a child. And that's what doesn't matter because she's thinking, have mercy. It doesn't matter if you're a Canaanite, it doesn't matter if you were cursed. It doesn't matter if you were in a gang, it doesn't matter if you were this, it doesn't matter that. As soon as you repent, as soon as you believe, you get the promises. So don't come to me crying and weeping. Understand it's for everybody. It's for everybody who believes. The answer is faith, not begging. You have to beg God. Just believe it. Just believe it. Just believe what he's promised. And anything he's promised, he will do. He didn't necessarily promise everybody a mansion in Beverly Hills. But what he has promised, he will do. So there's enough. What's that?
He provides everything.
Exactly. Exactly. He provides what you need. And so we don't want to be like the old folk thinking we're not going to get it until we get to heaven. That was their misconception. Because they kept saying by and by after a while. So they thought when we get to heaven, it's all going to happen. We don't want to go to the other extreme and think, well, I'm going to give you 5 Cadillacs tomorrow. But he will provide for us today, healing, deliverance, whatever it is that we need. He just calls us to believe that even though we're not Jews, that is still for us. So he didn't answer because he wanted her to teach a lesson. And when God doesn't answer immediately, you have to go, okay, there must be a lesson. This prayer is not being answered right away, so what do I have? How do I have to look at it differently at what my expectation is from God? What am I thinking God should be doing that really I got to change how I'm looking at it? Because that's why he won't answer sometimes. We have to change the question, like Lisa said.
Why are we asking for mercy then?
When are we asking for mercy?
Anytime. If God promised,
We're not.
So, you know, people like she say, have mercy on me. So when we pray, we don't have to say, Lord, have mercy on me.
No, we don't.
Because he's already, whatever we want,
Right.
he's already promised
why he
us, and
says-
he already said he's going to give it to us.
Yeah.
So we don't have to say, Lord, have mercy on me and show me grace and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Because if we just
He says,
say,
let your prayers be made known to him with thanksgiving. Meaning, when you pray, you're thanking him for what he's done. We're not telling him what to do. Okay, Lord, I need you to go into the hospital room and go to room 307. Like he doesn't know where it is.
Yeah.
We don't have to tell him what to do. We don't have to beg him. We make our requests known to God with thanksgiving. Thank you, Lord, that you provided in your word. Thank you that you said you're going to meet my needs. So the more promises that we know, that's why you have to read the Bible. Because the more that we know that's there, we can thank him for it. Sometimes we don't read the Bible. We just depend on what the preacher says. And then if he doesn't quote the whole Bible to us, we don't know it. But if we read it for ourselves, we'll see all kinds of promises. And our prayers are, thank you, Lord, that you said you're going to do this. I believe you. Thank you, said you're going to, right? We're not begging him. We're not telling him what to do. He's already provided for our needs. And we make our requests and petitions made known to God with thanksgiving. Thanking him that it's going to happen. Not begging him to make it.
right.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I understand why the Jews went first, but why were the Samaritans next before everybody else?
Okay, you just don't remember, but when the Jews went off into captivity, they brought in Samaritans to fill the land, because the Jews were, and when the Jews came back, they intermarried with some of the
They
Samaritans.
were kind of like half-breeds.
Right, they're like half-breeds. But the Samaritans believed the promises. They believed But a lot of Jews treated them badly. And, well, you're happy, but you're not really full Jews. And, you know, but they believed. In fact, the Jews would not let them come into their temple. So the Samaritans constructed their own temple. That's why when he runs into the woman at the well, he says, the Jews say that they should worship here, but we worship on this mountain. Which temple is right? But the Samaritans believed in Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and all that. It's just the Jews were prejudiced against them. So Jesus was honoring their faith and saying, first I'm going to go to the Jews and then go to the Samaritans and let them and reward them. Because he says the hour's coming and now is when we're not going to worship in the temple. It won't matter. We're going to worship him in I would say in honor and in truth. Worship him in spirit and in truth. So the Samaritans had to go next because they were the next group that really already believed. Then the Gentiles didn't believe at all. So they had to be witnessed to. So he's saying, go to the Samaritans next. And the Jews just were prejudiced against them. That's why in the story of the Good Samaritan, he's saying, it was a Samaritan who came and actually helped the person. And a Samaritan, oh my God. Yeah. So I want you to stop your prejudice and go to them and stop ignoring them because they've been living right next to you all this time and you've been ignoring them. Go to them next, and then after you go to Samaria, then go to the uttermost parts of the world. Make sense? Okay. All right, let's